All right. Hey there, and welcome to another episode where we're going to talk about intrusive, blasphemous thoughts. And so, for those of you that don't know me, my name is Matt Cotty. I'm a licensed clinical social worker and the founder of Restored Minds and the creator of the AAA Response. And this is part of our series on scrupulosity. Now, scrupulosity is a form of OCD and anxiety where the fear really latches on to one's faith, religion, or moralistic ideas, if you will. And essentially, the fear starts spinning in a loop about this content. And we've been doing a whole series on scrupulosity. So if this is the first time you're joining us here, please check out the rest of the series as it will provide much greater context to this one as well. And we're going to be kind of resurfacing ideas we've been talking about all along as well. So especially if you experience intrusive blasphemous thoughts, the understanding the other types of scrupulosity will often help you understand this type or your own type better, which is why I'm such a believer in having some aspect of group in your recovery path, because oftentimes when we can see other people's fears, we can see them very objectively, and our own fears are very subjective. So we get clouded by the field of fear, or that energy of fear, just because it distorts everything. So with that said, intrusive blasphemous thoughts are really this form where the person's having these intrusive thoughts that are kind of automatically popping up into their awareness. They're against what the person believes. They don't want them, and they usually cause them a lot of distress. Now, these can take on so many different forms that I'm not going to be able to name all of the variants. So don't worry if I don't list your specific variation of intrusive thoughts. But everything from, again, blasphemous thoughts towards God, towards Jesus, towards other religious figures, intrusive imagery, could be violent, could be sexual. A lot of times it's certain sentences, certain foul language, maybe towards God, or again, other religious figures, could be intrusive thoughts towards like something like the Virgin Mary. It can take on so many variations. So what do we do about them? First thing is to correctly contextualize what's going on, right? So if you're thinking that the real problem is the thought itself, or more importantly, what the thought has latched onto, most people, they pursue help is their particular faith practice, right? So, they go see their pastor or their priest or their religious leader, and they seek guidance from them, or people they perceive to be, I don't know, well practiced in that faith. Okay. So they may seek guidance and reassurance from them. Initially, this tends to provide some level of relief, as the person is often able to provide reassurance, but then it tends to grow. And because we got the reassurance, which was the compulsion, the fear tends to grow, right? As we suppress the energy of fear, the thoughts become greater, the fear becomes greater, the compulsions become greater, and this loop begins to just spin. So the first thing is to correctly contextualize the problem and not identify it as anything to do with one's religion or faith or God. It's this is not the issue that we're handling. That's the projection, what we're projecting the fear onto. The fear is right here in you, in your body, in your space, in your consciousness. When the fear is experienced and we project it onto an object, we then justify, right? One, we deny the experience is ours to own. We make it external. Number two is then we then justify doing whatever we need to do to remedy that situation so that we feel better. Staying completely ignorant and blind to the fact that this is really just about our own emotion. So this, is an uncomfortable thing to face when it comes to scrupulosity, is that it actually has nothing to do with God or what you're worrying about. And more importantly, it's just this projected fear onto the topic of God. And when you are caught in this energy loop on that, it's endless. It's just, no matter how much reassurance you get, no matter how many times you read the Bible or another text, or you pray, or you do all these things, the only reason that you're really doing those things for people in the loop of scrupulosity is to make yourself feel better. So this is the trap that people get caught in, is that with the intrusive thoughts, because you project them onto God, or you're afraid that God is going to judge you, you justify doing all the compulsions that make you feel better, but convince yourself that it's really about appeasing God so God doesn't condemn you. And or you don't offend God. Now, and again, like I said, these intrusive automatic thoughts, they're automatically happening in and of themselves. They're not the person's not purposefully wanting to experience these thoughts. And so one of the things we need to really factor in here, and again, this is obviously under the presumption that you're a believer in God, or you practice some element of your own faith in a higher power, is that if you believe in an unconditionally loving God that's, again, all-knowing, all-powerful, everywhere, omnipresent, then God understands, if that is true, God understands intrusive thoughts. He understands the intention that you're operating from. He understands your experience. And more importantly, can handle that. He can handle that experience. This is one of the things that I often speak with my clients about who struggle with this, is that a lot of times we feel in these intrusive thoughts like we are trying to protect God from these thoughts. Like that God is so easily offended and rattled by an internal experience that we have no control over, that we have to protect ourselves from God. And so our viewpoint on God is generally very condemning, very vengeful, very angry, and really not in the viewpoint of unconditionally loving. And so if you believe in an unconditionally loving God, and we really, when you really sit there and think about those two words, like unconditional love, what that means is like that energy of love, that field of love that's very high, very compassionate. That field doesn't align with the belief structures associated with these intrusive thoughts. And this is why oftentimes when I ask people, like, is it okay for someone else to have an intrusive thought pop up in their mind? They're always like, oh yeah, that's, God would understand, right? Or they're always usually able to give the answer of what that person would do, and actually offer the correct answer. So when someone is engaging in scrupulous compulsions, such as, reading the Bible 3 hours a day, because if they don't, then they're going to go to hell, or God's going to judge them, or they're doing it to distract themselves from their thoughts. The intentionality behind why they're doing it has nothing to do with growing connection or getting deeper or closer to God. It has to do with alleviating their own inner state. And this is how you really begin to differentiate a compulsion in someone's life versus a true religious practice, is really the energy state behind the behavior itself. So someone who is really deep in scrupulosity, a lot of times what I'll ask them to do is like, okay, I want you to stop that behavior for, let's say, a week, 2 weeks, 3 weeks. And that behavior might be reading the Bible, it might, or a religious text, it might be prayer, it might be going to church or mass or temple, or whatever their practice is, right? Confessing. And generally, if I say to stop that behavior, and then immediately all this fear surfaces up, it's really clear that the behavior is done to alleviate the fear itself. And then what happens though is that it often gets reprojected in saying that, no, this is really important to me, because they're unconscious of the fear. So they think that it's really important to them, and that's why they're afraid. And this is where things get kind of sticky, where you have to really decide, like, what issue am I dealing with here? Am I dealing with an issue of offending God and going to hell? Or am I dealing with an issue of OCD and anxiety? And are these intrusive thoughts? And if you fall into the category of intrusive thoughts, and you've gone down the rabbit hole of talking to religious, people in your religion, people who, you perceive to be further along the path, people you can get guidance and feedback from. And their conclusion is not that this is a religious problem and this is an OCD and anxiety problem. Then you have to fully commit to the idea that this is what I'm actually trying to solve, is OCD and anxiety. And how you do that is by confronting a fear actually in the body. You acknowledge this is a fear issue, and fear distorts your perception. It creates a mirage, if you will. I use that analogy sometimes, is fear creates a mirage, and what you see through the mirage, if you're unaware that it's a mirage, it looks real to you. But if you're aware that it's a mirage, you see it's a mirage, and this is what I see through it. And that's the difference between really, when we're talking about how to handle intrusive blasphemous thoughts, you have to eliminate all the compulsions you're doing. So again, all the avoidance, reassurance, the controlling, the rumination, the analyzing, thought blocking, thought suppression, right? Mentally praying, all these things. And if you do any compulsions, it's again feeding that loop. And so when you understand that this is a loop issue, then you start to actually break the loop itself, not what you're looping about. This is the hardest jump to get someone to make, in my opinion, when it comes to OCD and anxiety recovery, is really getting the person to understand that what they perceive the problem to be and what the problem is are two totally different things. So if you try to take treatment solutions, let's say like the AAA response, like I teach in my book, right? I have a link down below. If you try to take that and implement it into your perceived problem, which is, again, blasphemous thoughts or salvation or any other scrupulous theme, it's not going to work because you're trying to apply it to the wrong problem. What these tools are designed to do is break the loop. The loop is the problem, not what you're looping about. And that's really so important to understand with intrusive blasphemous thoughts, is really first aligning with the idea of what it means to believe in a God that's unconditional love. And again, understanding all-knowing, all-powerful omnipresence as well as characteristics of God, that God really understands these thoughts are intrusive. He understands the concept of it. He understands what OCD and anxiety is, what fear does, how fear works, and trusting that is what's really going on. And that's such an important element, I think, when it comes to, really overcoming scrupulosity and taking your life back. So if you found this video helpful, I have resources down in the notes. You can also head over to restoredminds.com. That's my site. I have several resources you can apply for my 12-week program as well, because once you really understand that this is a loop problem and that what we're really dealing with is OCD and anxiety, once you really commit to solving that problem is very solvable. And again, we can teach you the tools on how to do that. So hope this was helpful. Wish you guys a great day, great week. And if you found this helpful, again, please like, subscribe, and comment below, and leave us a nice review on iTunes and Spotify. With that, thank you. Wish you a great week. Talk to you soon. Hey there. So if you enjoyed that video, we've linked up a few more videos that we think you'd find helpful as well. And if you have found this helpful, we'd really appreciate your support by liking and subscribing. And if you're looking for help and guidance, please check out restoredminds.com, as we have several options for you to get started. See you guys soon.